The conflict in Nigeria is unfortunate. The reason is that most of the conflicts, though they may start as economic issues, but they've always ended up as religious issues. Even if they start as political issues, they always end up as religious issues. Lives have been wasted. It has denied them going to school, denied them economic opportunity because they are fighting. So as co-facilitator of the Global Peace Foundation campaign on One Family on the Go, we decided to move into those local communities to begin to speak to the people on the need for them to remember that human beings are members of one family on the go.
So the mission of our work in the aforementioned areas is to inculcate in people the spirit of oneness, the spirit of the sanctity of the fundamental human rights of all and sundry, regardless of any difference. And it has been yielding substantial beneficial results. We have selected targeted groups: the young people, the women, the religious leaders, and the traditional leaders. So we always bring them together because whenever a crisis erupts, the most vulnerable are the women and the children. So that is why we have decided to use the religious leaders, the traditional leaders, the young people, and the women to inculcate in themselves the message of oneness of humanity.
We need to build capacity of more leaders who will go to rural communities, to churches and mosques, to schools, and teach this message of peace. In Africa, there is this tradition or culture where we are one another keeper. With the fact about it, we have an extended relationship. Sometimes some people can call you their brother while they have no blood relationship with you. So if we have that, why don't we build on that kind of understanding that we call some people our brothers and really being brothers and protect them? Why don't we begin a system where we will love one another, we will cherish one another, we will celebrate one another, we will defend one another. Our children will grow to see others as part of their human family, not enemies.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and namaste everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from all parts of the world. My name is Aishwarya Chaturvedi. I am a lawyer by profession. I am also the president of NGO Nirman and work as the project leader for Global Peace Women in India. It's my absolute privilege to be your facilitator today. And thank you so much once again for joining our breakout room on values-based peace building and faith leaders, and it would be wonderful for us to get to know you better. So if you could just type in your names and where you are from in the chat box so that we can get to know about you. And now it gives me immense pleasure to introduce you all our speaker and presenter for today, Ms. Gail Hamilton. So Ms. Hamilton is the program specialist. Am I audible to everyone?
I hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So Ms. Gail Hamilton is serving as Senior Program Specialist of Value-Based Peace Building for the Global Peace Foundation. She has worked in the non-profit sector for more than 25 years and has served as an educator and mediator in international conflict situations and convener of interreligious networks and engagements. She lived and worked in Africa for 8 years, serving in the mission and humanitarian aid fields. Her passion for peace is rooted in her difficult experiences during 6 years of the war in Zimbabwe, the military coup in Kenya, and the aftermath of genocide in Rwanda. Ms. Gail was instrumental in establishing the humanitarian aid organization, Women for Women in Rwanda in 1997. She has coordinated interreligious peace-building tracks at the annual Global Peace Conventions and conferences in Philippines, Kenya, Atlanta, Malaysia, Paraguay, Uganda, and Korea. Ms. Gail is also the National Director of the Peace Hub campaign in the USA. She's the mother of 3 beautiful children and lives with her husband in Maryland.
Should I start now?
Yeah, welcome to Breakout Room. And could you please elaborate on the experiences that inspired you to take up values-based peace building?
Okay. I think my most powerful experience that propelled me into this field was when I went to Rwanda after the Rwandan genocide. I spent about 2 weeks there to do a feasibility study to see if the infrastructure was in place enough to begin an international NGO in Rwanda after the genocide. Actually, there were still many mass graves that were being discovered from day to day. People were still looking to identify their family members that they had lost. It was very intense atmosphere, even though some time had already gone by. But we interviewed many survivors of the genocide. So we heard a lot of firsthand stories, and of course, the question in my mind that kept me up pretty much every night that I was there. The question was how could human beings do this to each other? And I came to some kind of answer in my self, that it had a lot to do with accountability, that people, if they think they can get away with something, then it's possible for them to sink to their most base self. So anyway, from that time when I came back, I began to do a lot of research in the field of genocide, and I began to work with someone, an international scholar, renowned scholar on genocide. So that's what really ignited, I think, my passion for peace, was actually experiencing and not experiencing, but seeing the horrors of that war. Can you hear my dog?
I can hear, yeah. That is extremely inspiring, and at the same time, I would say that that must have been a really difficult time for you. I mean, must not be easy experiencing the things that you did and then coming out stronger.
Okay. Did you just ask me a question? I didn't hear you.
Yes, I'm about to ask you my next question. So could you tell us a little about your initiatives at the Global Peace Foundation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Sure, no problem. So I was wondering if you could share with us your initiatives at the Global Peace Foundation.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mentioned them very briefly in my presentation. There was 3 different methodologies that I mentioned that Global Peace Foundation is putting into practice in different areas of the world. The first was a One Family Under God campaign in Nigeria, which has been going for some number of years. That's what the film, Before I Spoke, that's what that was about. And that has been a very successful project led by our team are in Nigeria. So, and that's something that Global Peace Foundation always adheres to, that the initiatives are carried out by local people from that chapter. Global Peace Foundation is not an organization that parachutes in to a country and says these are the solutions to your problem. So we always, as our policy, we talk to the leaders of our chapter there, and they advise what their action is going to be, and we greatly respect our chapter leaders. So they have done a great job implementing the methodology of that campaign, and that methodology takes time. It's quite a process. It's a train the trainer methodology. They have a three-day workshop after they have gone into a community and received the go-ahead and the blessing from the traditional leader. And then they, with the help of the community leader, they begin to interact with women leaders, youth leaders, the religious leaders, the imam and the pastor of the community. And then eventually they're able to do a train the trainer workshop where they talk about the things that I mentioned in my presentation. And they have prolonged interaction on what are the universal principles and shared values that we have across religion, across tribe, across race, ethnicity. And then people begin to get to know each other based on their common humanity. So this is an identity, a shared identity that we all have, but we don't really live there. I mean, we don't live in that understanding that we are all members of the one human family under God. And when we begin to live there, and when we establish relationships across these divides, then peace really can begin, negotiation, compromise can begin. So that's one methodology. Another one is cross community reconciliation, and this is what we have just completed one. I guess it's going to be one phase of that in Montana, USA. Because I say one phase because everyone that was involved wants to continue, and they have established a peace and reconciliation committee for their city, which is Billings. It's the largest city in Montana. So that was a managed contact process where there were two groups which were in opposition in a sense. There was a lot of discrimination going on in the city. So we made two groups of Native young professionals and non-Native. And then for an entire year, actually, or 8 or 9 months, first of all, we had separate meetings. Those groups that I mentioned, met separately and had really dug down deep into what are the stereotypes of the other group and what kinds of things are going on. And so they did a lot of peace building training. So it's a very step-by-step managed learning process. And then eventually those two groups are introduced to each other once they, are really have opened their hearts and minds. Then they meet together, and we have some very interesting interactive exercises, initially starting with a nonverbal exercise, which brings out the humanity of the other and provides and facilitates a way to establish relationships. And so then to make a long story short, at the end of the day, we have a reconciled group who have actually, in this case, they went through a lot of transformation. They said things like, they had no idea that they were so similar to each other. They had hope in starting a new history. They, particularly the non-native group, they learned things about their shared history that they didn't realize and that they felt very bad about, but they felt that at this point in time is also history. History is now, and we can make a new history. These are the kind of things they said. So that is a very effective method. As I said, it takes an investment of time and deep heart and mind involvement, but wonderful things can happen. The third methodology I wanted to mention, because I think it is a very good prevention. Peace building is a fantastic prevention to violence. The problem is it's very hard to measure. Like, okay, how many murders, how much violence did we actually prevent, by inspiring social cohesion and reducing the marginalization of a particular group. It's very hard to measure that. But nevertheless, I feel the great prevention of violence is peace building, on the community level, facilitating situations where people that don't normally talk and be together, break bread together, can actually begin friendships. So that is what happens with the Peace Hub campaign. And what that is it appeals to groups or communities. It could be faith communities, or it could be a community center, recreation center, PTA. I don't know. In USA, we have parent organizations at our schools. It could be any kind of group. It doesn't have to be a religious group, because the materials are not particularly religious. But let's say if you take a church, a faith community, and they say, oh, we want to become a peace hub. And we want to, all of us, we want to become peace builders. And so there's a workbook that they would go through. It takes 4 meetings to go through this peace building education. But it's not just cognitive. Each session, like the first session, really starts to go into identity-based conflict. What is it? But there's interactive exercises at the conclusion of the group study. The content is all by video, by film, online film, short film, like 15 minutes max. And then the group can do the exercises together. So at the end of the day, at the end of that meeting, it's not just cognitive, but if they do the exercises and have the discussion, it's an experiential learning, truly. And let's say once that church becomes a peace hub, then the Global Peace Foundation can help connect them to, let's say, a mosque, or a temple, or a different, a different sort of religious community. And then that community can work through the workbook, the peace building education, and then they can come together and design a community service project, and they can, get to know each other on a deep level and do things together. That's the goal. And I guess I'll stop there, but that's something, it's self-directed. So you don't have to be an expert on peace building. You just follow the directions in the workbook and you work through it. And Global Peace Foundation representatives are there always to help, to assist, even to mediate if needed. But it's something that can have a life of its own.
Right, absolutely. And all those initiatives sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing with us. And I can personally relate to all of them because India, as an independent country, has actually practiced all these movements in some form, I would say, because one of our great leaders of years, Mahatma Gandhi, he propagated non-violence movement in India. And in India also, we face a lot of identity conflicts, and considering how diverse the country is, you always have these issues coming up with people, talking about
religion and caste. So I completely understand that peace building efforts and are always useful. And as you said that, just not looking at all these things, but understanding that we are all human beings at the end of the day. So that is something very important. Thank you for sharing with us. And we are going to be sharing all the links to all the campaigns that Ms. Gail just talked about in our chat box. So you can feel free to refer to them as and when you like. And I would also request you all to put in your questions if you have any in the chat box, and we will try and take up as many as time allows. And till that's happening, I see that Reverend Hayab is over here. So I would request him to say a few words if he would like. Reverend Hayab, can you hear us?
I wanted to just sit quiet and listen to Gail. Hi, I'm enjoying everything that is going on here. I really didn't want to say anything than to just, but thank you very much for calling me to say a word. Truly, the experience in the field is quite challenging, but also interesting because every day in the field you learn new things. Every day in the field you appreciate the crisis better than what you are hearing from outside. In one of the group I shared, I said, one of the most important aspects of community peace building is that the facilitator also learn. He's not just hearing the story as it is written on newspaper or what the televisions are saying. He learned from the people, from the victim, from even the perpetrators, because they are all together in the community. He listens to them, he learns from them. And then the second aspect of it is it makes people take ownership, because it is their project, it is their issue, it is their program. The fact is that coming into their community to work with them is just to extend a hand of fellowship, but it is not to come and take them away. So they take ownership of the project and then they move on even when you are away. So these are some of the things we are learning. We do have challenges sometimes because there are issues of trust. You go to your community, they are not so sure. Are you coming to spy on them, or you are really coming to mediate? Are you coming to really facilitate dialogue, or you are coming to exploit their differences for your own personal gain? Because many groups have come around and the reason for their coming is not the same. That's why I cherish and I celebrate Global Peace Foundation, especially the One Family Under God campaign. It's apt. That message is very, very strong because people are looking to unite. People are looking to come together. And we are saying we are one family under God. Wow. Let's try these people. Let's see what they are up to. And gradually we are making progress. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful thoughts with us. Thank you. And now I would like to turn to our audience, take up a few questions. I see that there are no questions as of now in the chat. So if at all you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and or else you could also raise your hand probably, and we can take a few questions
Live here before concluding the room. Okay, so we have, I would say it's a question as much as it's a suggestion that could you please share a moment of reconciliation that keeps you inspired?
Yes. You know, my most recent work has been in Montana, and I'm from Ohio, which is also a state in Midwest, and I'm not very young, so I've been around a long time. So actually, I myself did not know the many of the instances of the history of Native Americans in USA. Growing up in high school, I had no idea. I wouldn't have called what happened a genocide. And I also then had no idea about the second genocide, which was a cultural genocide, where the Native Americans were forced by the government and by the military to put their children in residential schools. And the theme of that whole movement was kill the Indian, save the man. And these schools, or women, these schools were actually run by churches at that time. But there was tremendous discrimination, but severe abuse, physical and sexual abuse in those schools. So that's called, you know, a cultural genocide, because it was forced assimilation, right? And I myself did not know the depths of that. So I was so moved by the Native American team that we had. And our facilitator, our Native American facilitator, his name is Josiah Huggs, and he's a counselor in a health center in Montana, and he helps Native Americans with addiction and suicide prevention. So I was there doing a facilitator workshop, and I was just blown away by the depth of humility of the Native facilitators. And so Josiah said, I asked, why are you going to do this? Why are you doing this project? What motivates you? And he said that in Native American traditional spirituality, when they are faced with a decision, they make their decisions with the awareness of 7 generations in the future. Not one generation, 7. Yeah. And so he said, you know, he has children himself. And so he said, I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for the future, for the generations in the future. And I just, I had to keep my cool, because I was teaching that workshop, but I could have sat down and just cried, because, you know, knowing what I had learned, you know, even more deeply about what really happened, and what even is happening today, the continued discrimination today. I was just really, really moved by such a heart of reconciliation. And even for this for this convention. I can almost say that my high point has been, I interviewed Chief Dr. Robert Joseph, and he's going to be the first speaker in the main plenary. I'm giving a little commercial here. There's our main plenary is today at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and he will be one of the first speakers in the Peacebuilding segment. And he was the founder in Canada of the Residential School Survivors Society, and then he became the founder of Reconciliation Canada. And that country has an incredible model of resolving and reconciling natives and non-natives and the history. But he mentioned that what happened recently was, maybe I should plug him. Is that my dog barking? Is that bothering?
That just wants me to play with me. Okay. He's not disturbing at all.
You can't hear it that much? Okay. All right. So I'm so sorry. When I put the headphones on, then I can't hear you very well. Okay. So he talks about he's like Mr. Reconciliation. I mean, what he has forgiven in his heart, and how he has worked so hard for reconciliation is very profound. And I interviewed him for like over half an hour, and then I had to make a small segment for the convention plenary. But we will have the whole interview on our website as soon as possible, because it was just amazing. So forgiveness is really at the heart of reconciliation. They're almost a similar thing.
And I really look forward to reading that interview. It sounds very extremely interesting and inspiring. So, would somebody from the audience like to type in the chat a moment of reconciliation that keeps them inspired, or would like to unmute themselves and share something with us? Then I would just like to ask Gail one last question, that what has been the most difficult or challenging project for you to implement so far or work on so far?
You said, what is the most difficult project?
Yeah.
Actually, is that better? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Uh-huh. And now you can't hear the dog, right?
That's okay.
You can still hear. Oh. Well, then I don't need to wear these. Okay. I can say the most difficult project was probably in Rwanda, because emotionally it was so difficult to be there and to listen to the testimonials of the families and the people, the victims of the genocide. And I was there to establish a humanitarian aid organization that would help the survivors of the genocide. So just emotionally, I was just crying every day for those survivors and wanting to do so much more than we ever could do. So I suppose that was probably my most difficult time, perhaps.
Yes, and I agree with you. In fact, when I was reading your bio, that takes a lot emotionally to acclimatize situations and then work towards improving that predicament. So really hats off to you, and I'm sure that all of us present here today will be inspired and energized after this discussion. And yes, so this is it's the main agenda to to learn something and to feel inspired and determined to do something good for your community. So having said that, I would request Ms. Gail to share her concluding remarks with her to conclude our session.
Sorry, I didn't hear you so well. My concluding remarks. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I think that what I would want to say is that all of us can be peace builders. And it really, peace and reconciliation and forgiveness, it really begins on a personal level. Like we cannot make reconciliation for some between ethnicities or between races in America. Anyway, we can't work publicly if within our own families, unless we have peace within our own families. So there's a need for reconciliation and forgiveness on all levels of our lives, and it really has to be personal. Like sometimes reconciliation in USA right now, there's so many issues about African American history, and so often we are approaching it from a political perspective or all kinds of different perspectives, but it really has to begin, the people who lead such movements have to really look within their own personal lives. It has to be someone who has experienced reconciliation and is free from hatred and free from resentment personally, in order to lead a movement of reconciliation. So we really have to search our hearts, and there's need for reconciliation on every level, every family, every partnership, every community. So we don't have to look very far to see where we can begin our work. And then what we say is going to have impact, because it's what we say, what we speak is really from experience, rather than just something out of our heads. So for a long time, peace building was done by diplomats. Well, that's really peacemaking, is the treaties and the agreements that diplomats make. But actually, in the last 20 years, civil society organizations have really become involved in peacemaking, and I think it's really time now where we can have confidence in bottom up work. Grassroots peace building is tremendously valuable, and no matter what is happening politically in one's country, there's work to be done in one's community, and a movement of peace can be so powerful. I remember George Mitchell, when he went to Ireland, he said this simple statement, but it's so true. He said, peace will never come until the people of that area or that region want peace. If people are tired are tired of the hatred that's burning up their insides, when people are tired of the violence and the horror of war, when people really long for peace. That's why I mentioned that comment of Josiah, the native leader in Montana, because that to me, my question is always how to inspire people to have a deep desire for peace, because until we want peace, until we really want it, we're not going to have it. So how to inspire that desire for peace is if we think about the future, we think about our children, we think about, you know, our brothers and sisters and the future. That can really motivate us to do what we need to do. I mean, it's not easy, and it's work that takes time. It takes time. There's no silver bullet, there's no special magic pill. There's you know, we're in a culture where everyone wants things to happen quickly. Sound bites, you know, what are you going on and on for? Give me a sound bite. But peace is not built that way. Peace takes time, takes a real determination, and you think you've forgiven. You think that you've forgiven, but actually, you know, you dig down deep in your heart and there's still a little bit of resentment there, and you got to work through that. So sometimes the forgiveness and the reconciliation happens sort of by layers, you know what I mean? So it's not easy, and it takes time, but it's where we really want to go.
Right. That's absolutely true, and I completely agree with you. And, those are very wise and profound words, and extremely relevant in today's times. As they say, even for successful people and successful ideas, that it's not a eureka moment; it's a process. So you have to believe in the process and be honest to what you're doing, and one day we'll get there, hopefully. So thank you so much for being here today with us, Ms. Gail, and sharing about your work. It was really awe-inspiring for me, and I'm sure for everyone else. And before we close out this session, I would request everyone, if you're comfortable, to turn your videos on so that we could see your beautiful faces and take a picture of all of us together here. So to close out the session, let's hear it from Dr. Sona Khan himself through this video, her closing remarks.
Amazing, right? Some of these issues are so complex, it is easy to get overwhelmed. However, each presenter, each facilitator, rapporteur, and discussant embodies the power of a service-minded woman, motivated by her love for her family and other families, our shared human family, to make the world a better place. I know many of you have poured years, if not decades, into public service for your communities and nations. You are an inspiration. I'd like to revisit the question that GP Women Chairwoman Dr. Chun Sung Moon posed to us all yesterday. How can we, as a women, as a leaders, contribute to opening a path to a brighter future? Through the plenary yesterday and the workshop today, I think that we have realized the answer begins in our families and extends out into our communities and to the world. In our homes, we can cultivate profound reserves of gratitude, service, and unconditional love that can spread out and generate effective and sustainable solutions. If each of us continues to take action in our homes and in our communities. If each of us continues to invest in the connections we made here, I truly believe that we will spark transformation toward a more peaceful world. Right? Dr. Moon said, together with our collective strength of service, heart, and care, we will get through these times and we will create a brighter and greater future. I truly, firmly believe this. So instead of closing the story, let this be a new chapter of the exciting work that is to come. Let's invest in this community of service-minded readers to expand our impact together. Before you go, please fill out the post-session survey to let us know what you liked and how we can improve. We really appreciate your feedback. I wish you all well and thank you so much for your active participation. Goodbye until next time.
Wonderful, wonderful remarks from Dr. Kam. And I would like to thank you all once again for joining us today. And